an ancient promise that still affects today. Although Israel is a small country, it is always in the news due to conflict, tensions in the Middle East and wars. Why? Look at the history of Israel in the book of Genesis, in the Bible. It says that 4,000 years ago a man who is now very famous went on a campaign to that part of the world. The Bible says that his story affects our future. This ancient man is Abraham, also known as Abram. We can take his story seriously because the areas and cities he visited are also mentioned in other old manuscripts. God made a promise to Abraham. Most of us wonder if God exists and if he really is the God of the Bible. In the Bible, God says, "And I will magnify your name," and today the name of Abraham is known throughout the world. The promise came true. The earliest manuscripts of Genesis, found in the Dead Sea Scrolls, date from 200–100 BC. It means that from that time the promise was already in writing. At that time, Abraham's name was not well known, so the promise was fulfilled only after it was written, but not before. Surprisingly, Abraham did not actually do anything significant during his life. He was not a great writer, king, inventor, or military leader. The only thing he did was obey the order and go on a campaign, and he also became the father of several children. His name is great only because his children became the nations that kept the record of his life, and then individuals and nations descended from him became great. This is exactly what was promised in Genesis 12, "And I will make you a great nation, and I will magnify your name." No one else, in the entire history of mankind, is so famous only because of their descendants, and not because of great achievements in their own lives. The Hebrews, descended from Abraham, were never really a nation associated with greatness. They did not conquer great empires like the Romans, they did not create great monuments like the Egyptian pyramids. Their glory comes from the law and the book they wrote, from several eminent men who were Jews, from the fact that they lived and developed as a somewhat isolated group for thousands of years. Their greatness is not in what they have done, but in what has been done for and through them. The promise repeatedly says that "I will do." Their unique greatness was due to God, not to their own abilities, conquests, or efforts. The promise to Abraham came true because he trusted the promise and chose the path less traveled. Consider how likely it was that the promise would not come to pass, but it did and continues to unfold, just as it had been declared thousands of years ago. What a strong confirmation that the promise was fulfilled only by the power and authority of the Lord. The promise contains something else. The blessing was not just for Abraham. God says that all the tribes of the earth will be blessed in you. Through Abraham. We must pay attention because you and I are part of all peoples on earth, regardless of our religion, skin color, origin, nationality, social status or language. The promised blessing applies to everyone who lives now on earth. How? When? What exactly is the blessing? It is not clearly stated. But since we know that the first parts of this promise have been fulfilled, we can be sure that the last part will also be fulfilled. We find the key to unlocking this mystery as we continue to follow Abraham's journey. Several years had passed in Abraham's life since the promise recorded in Genesis 12 had been made. In humility, Abraham went to Canaan, the promised land, the territory of present-day Israel, but the birth of the promised son did not take place. So Abraham began to worry. Abraham spent the night under the open sky, waiting for the beginning of the great nation that God had promised him. But nothing happened, and he was already about 85 years old. 10 years have passed since his campaign. He complained that God had not kept his promise. Their conversation continued. Then the word of the Lord came to him. He will not be your heir, but the one who will come out of your heart, he will be your heir. The Lord took him outside and said, "Look at the sky and count the stars as soon as you can count them." And he prophesied to him, "Such will be your offspring." Thus, God expanded on his original promise by declaring that Abraham would have a son from whom would come a nation as numerous as the stars in the sky. And this nation will receive the promised land, the territory of present-day Israel. And Abraham believed the Lord, and the Lord counted it to Abraham as righteousness. Our depravity has led to our habit of not doing what is good, resulting in emptiness and death. If you doubt this, read the world news headlines and see what people have been doing in the last 24 hours. It means that we are separated from the righteous God because we lack righteousness. Our depravity repels God just as we would shun the body of a dead rat. We wouldn't want to be around him. Thus, the words of the prophet Isaiah in the Bible come true. All of us have become like the unclean, and all our righteousness, like a stained garment, and we have all faded like a leaf, and our iniquities, like the wind, carry us away. Isaiah 64:6. But in this conversation between Abraham and God we find a silent statement that Abraham has acquired righteousness and God accepts it despite the fact that Abraham was not sinless. So what did Abraham do to gain this righteousness? It says that Abraham simply believed. And that's all. We try to earn righteousness by our works, but this man, Abraham, earned it by his faith alone. But what does faith mean? And what does it have to do with our righteousness? We will analyze this in the following videos.